name is Alex, and today we're going to talk about the progress of tourism development in Taiwan. So from this slide, it's actually indicated there are many different forms of the tourism, from culture, the city, the sightseeing, and then some spectacular events that happen in Taiwan. So today, let me go through all the history of Taiwan tourism development with you. But first of all, let me introduce about myself. So my name is Alex Lin, and before I became a tour guide, I actually, as a landscape designer, work in New Jersey, United States. So my background in college, I'm actually a horticulturalist, graduate from Taichung. Then later, I moved to the United States for my graduate degree as a landscape architect student. So I worked in the States until 2011 and back to Taiwan. At the beginning, I was in the community planning and the design fields, helped to develop and enhance empowerment of the Taiwanese culture and also the Taiwanese community. But then at the time, I realized being a tour guide can also help to promote this beautiful, diverse culture, beautiful nature, and delicious food of Taiwan. So I decided to become a tour guide. So this is the reason why you can see me right now. And because I worked many cases with Tourism Bureau since 2013. So I learned about the policy and then also interested in some of the history. So that's the reason why I'm talking about the history and also the progress of the tourism development in Taiwan today. So first of all, let me give you a brief of Taiwan history. First of all, about Taiwan, we actually exist this island for many millions of years ago, but not until 1544, when the Portuguese sailors sailed by during the Great Extinction time, they saw a very beautiful island with lush and green, so they called out Island Formosa. And also, before that, Taiwan already had people lived in this island for many, many years. Some dated back on the archaeological site for 5,000 years. And according to the recent discovery, we're actually the ancestor, the beginning of the island hopping culture for the Polynesians. So some of the language that from our indigenous people's tribe are actually able to communicate with some of the other Polynesian cultures. So hopefully you can meet some of the ancestors when you visit Taiwan. And then after that, until 1624, the Dutch start to have the settlement in Taiwan, and they are through the VOC, the Dutch East Indian Company. So from 1624 to 1662, the Dutch colonized the Formosa, mainly at the beginning down south on the southwest side of Tainan. And then in 1626, the Spanish, they're from Philippines, start to colonize the northern part of Taiwan, which is located in around Keelung and currently Tamsui area. But unfortunately, the Spanish abandoned the Taiwan in 1642, so the Dutch even took over the northern part of the Taiwan and started taking over the north and south. There's an indigenous people tribal kingdom in the middle part. So the Dutch people stayed in Taiwan until 1662. Then after that, the Ming Dynasty was taken over by the Qing Dynasty at the time. So from the mainland China, our kingdom of Dongning moved to Taiwan from 1662. And then finally also took it over by the Qing Dynasty in 1683. So ever since the 1683 to 1895, we're actually ruled by the Qing Dynasty of the mainland Chinese. And during that time, they start to develop the Tainan area, then moved to Taichung, and then finally Taipei. So Taipei was the latest Chinese city established and also built the city wall in the Qing Dynasty. And after that, the Japanese came in because the Qing Dynasty lose the war to the Sino-Japanese War and have to give Taiwan away to Japan. So from 1895 to 1945, the 50 years, Taiwan is actually a colony of the Japan. So during the Japanese rule, they actually set up many infrastructures, including roads, railroads, cities, and many different cityscape, urban planning, and even start to colonize the mountain area, which was not part of the Qing dynasty during that time, and start to integrate the Aborigines. So during that time, after the infrastructure was set up and also people start making money, we start to have the actual form of tourism during the Japanese ruling. And then after that, 1945, Japanese lose World War II. So Taiwan returned to China, which at the time was Republic of China, and until nowadays, it's also known as Taiwan. So now let's go to see what happened during the Qing dynasty of the tourism. So during the Qing dynasty, people are farmers, agriculture, like doing more, and also some of the trade to mainland China, and then some maybe with the Dutch continues, and also the Spanish, the French, and English. But at the time, there's not much form of the tourism besides the temple festival. So the temple festival and the religious pilgrimage are the most common form of the tourism. Because during that time, remember the beginning of Qing dynasty ruling, they came to Taiwan with many believers. They will bring their local belief, just like people bring the church or different temples to where their new colony. So same as the mainland Chinese, when they move to Taiwan, they bring their temples, different type of temples, to the different settlements. And they also branches out to the different small cities and locations, so from the major city to the small city. And every year, maybe they need to pay tribute to their mother temple, so there are pilgrimage happening almost every year, and sometimes maybe every other years. So that was the most common form of the tourism. People walk many days just for that type of pilgrimage. And then sometimes it's a temple festival, so people from different cities, they'll go to see, as a spectator, to see the temple festival. Then during the Japanese rule, that was 1895 to 1945. It's the beginning of the tourism industry in Taiwan. So the tourism actually refers to making a trip to another place to see the sights, the traveling with planned itineraries under the guidance of the organizations, and then return to work as a normal daily life. So the actual tourism form was established in Taiwan during Japanese colonial time. And then during that period of time, the Japanese ruled, Taiwan wasn't so welcome to tourism because at the time we have many malarias and also a lot of nature disease. So the Japanese have to take many infrastructure to establish, for example, the sewage system, the drinking water system, to make people more healthy, and then also systemize the travel informations, so for people to be able to travel from place to place. And the most important thing also is because during the Japanese colonial time, the Western calendar was applied. So it's also called the Gregorian calendar, because before that, Taiwanese people we called either the lunar calendar or the Chinese calendar. We celebrate the New Year in a different time. As you know, it was in January or February, why the different year is the lunar. And then during the Japanese colonial time, because they start to adapt the Western culture, the Japanese start to using more of the Western culture, they changed the calendar to the Western calendar. So we start to having the Western calendar during the Japanese colonial time. People start use the Sunday to Saturday system, and people work from Monday to Saturday and have the Sunday off, which the off day is a beginning of people start to plan where to go, where to visit, and where to have tours. And the other very important things is to complete the completion of the Taiwan Trunk Railway, which also known the Western Trunk Line, in the 1908. From this map, which is drawn in 1931. You can see from the Keelung to Kaohsiung area, this red line is completed in 1908. And then the other two lines on the eastern part of Taiwan was later on, so it's a different story. But because the completion of the railroad is also help for the transportations and also for the shipments. It's very important to the travel industry as well. The other one is to introduce the concept of the beach park and also the school field trip and excursions, which boost a lot of the different tourism industry. So first of all, let's see the Taiwan trunk line in 1908. So during that time, the train service from Keelung to Kaohsiung, and originally the travel time from Keelung to Kaohsiung takes more than a week to complete by walking or on boat in a certain location. But then, after the trunk line was developed, it only takes 14 hours to travel from Taipei to Kaohsiung. And then also, the Governor General's helped to develop the Governor General's Railway Department. In 1908, they established the passenger unit. And then later, in 1937, they even established the tourism unit to provide the guidebook, publish the railway travel guide, and also to help people to get like information or like help center to know how to plan the travel. They even have their own tour company. So during that time, the information book looks like this, published by the Eastern Travel Agency. It's actually indicate the travel time schedule of the train and also hotels informations and the sightseeing informations, restaurant informations, all within this tour in the guidebook, just like the Lonely Planet of Taiwan during the colonial time. And this is very important for people to be able to plan their trip and then also to be able to get the informations and then also help the local to start to having the lodging system and then also the travel system. So we can see here, this is one of the postcards sending out about our tourism beach in Taiwan. It's called the Bathing of Tamshui. You know, Tamshui is currently also a very important tourist site. But in the old days, they built the beach next to the Tamshui River, and then also introduced the beach park. So this beach park is not only for learning how to swim for the recreational purpose, but it's also for the health. During the Japanese colonial time, because they adapted the Western medicine and the belief the salt will kill all the germs or will boost people's immune system, so does the solar, so the sun. So they encourage people to go to the beach, to bathing in the sun, and also to soak in the salt water to reduce the amount of the disease that will get in Taiwan. And besides that, the school system also helped to bring more and more tourists to the beach park, because during that time, the elementary school system or the other school system, they encourage the student to learn how to swim. Before that, the Taiwanese people were actually afraid of water, although we're an island that people don't like to swim. And a lot of Chinese people use the waterfront as a landfill to dump the garbage, and then also the fish farm, and then some of them can be the oyster farm. So not too many people use the waterfront. It's not until the Japanese start to ask students have to learn how to swim, and they need to practice how to swim. So that's when we have the public pool and then the beach park, because not everybody are accessible to the public pool, which is also very important to be able to get to the water, learn to play, and get more recreational ideas. And then the other one is a school field trip. So the school field trip and excursions, it's indicated for like different days. For example, the field trip for people to able to go outside, to stay in different cities, stay overnight. And then for the excursions, They're just like a day trip, a day tour. For example, they can go to the neighborhood park, the neighborhood temples, the neighborhood Shindo shrines to visit as an excursion. So in Taiwan, we actually have a really cute name about excursions. It's called 远足, which means far foot. Basically, you just walk to the locations for the excursions, or maybe take some form of public transportation. So the map on the left-hand side, which indicates is Taiwan Shindo Shrine. And then this Shindo Shrine is one of the very important locations. It's called the Taipei Shrine, the Taiwan Shrine. And this Taiwan Shrine is established in 1909. So basically, most of students who study in Taiwan, because they want to establish as a Japanese, so you have to take the culture, but you have to visit this Taiwan Shrine. And then the map on the right-hand side is the Taipei Zoo, which is one of the earliest zoo established during the Japanese in the Japanese colony, which is also top 5 largest zoo in the Japanese territory at that time. So this zoo was built in 1914, and in the back, this is the first zoo first elephant sent to Taiwan. Its name is Miss Ma Jiang. And so everybody will go to the zoo to visit this elephant. So this photo on the right-hand side, they're actually students from Tainan traveling all the way to Taipei to see this elephant in 1938. And the other locations people usually bring students to are the military facilities or some important locations, even like some nature site or like famous scenic area. For example, on the left-hand side, there are students visiting the very southern part of Taiwan. In the backdrop, you can see there's a lighthouse. It's called the Eluanmi Lighthouse. To indicate the very southern point of Taiwan, and it's also very important because it guarded the Taiwan Strait and also the Pacific Oceans to Philippines, and to the west is mainland China. So many students will visit this location as well. And then to the right-hand side is one of the most famous sacred trees in Taiwan. Unfortunately, it was knocked down by the lightning and then taken down during the 90s. But the Japanese colonial time, because we already have established the mountain railroad system, so students are able to take the train to visit the sacred tree, to visit the Alishan National Forest, which is also one of the earliest mountain railroad in Taiwan, and then also bring everybody able to visit the forest, but also able to unload to bring the wood logging, the logs from the mountains, ship it to the port, and then export to Japan. So there are several very big trees in the Japanese shrine nowadays. Still have the trunk, still have the wood from Japan, from Taiwan, from Alishan. And so many times people, when we go to visit Japan, they will say, "Oh, these are the mandatory supported wood from Alishan." And then the other very important locations of the school field trip and excursions is to visit some very important infrastructure, industrial structures, or something that can enhance the Japanese colony power, the imperial power, or the imperial improvement during the time. This is actually an oil field, so where they're able to get the nature gasoline, which is oil, the digging the well. We do have some kind of that oil in the old days, and also nature gas. So they will bring the students, sometimes it's more of the high school student, to visit this kind of industrial site. Okay. The students here are actually from Taipei. They're equivalent to the junior high school or senior high school at the time, and they have to travel. If nowadays they have to travel about 3 hours, So in the old days, it will be like a whole day to visit this site in Miaoli about the oil drill. Okay, so the other thing during the colonial time, very important, is the Japanese want to encourage students to participate in the PE class and also enhance their body and also encourage them to be able to be a group. You know, like Japanese people, they love being as a group, so they have to follow the discipline and then being disciplined. So the hiking is also another very important event during the field trip and excursions. So there's a lot of things that are happening during this time, especially one of the most important for the students. They are able to reach the Mount Jade, the summit, to be able to get to the tallest mountain of Taiwan and to showcase to their classmates. And at the time, you know, like Mount Fuji is the tallest mountain in Japan, but during the colonial time, they discovered Mount Jade is actually taller than Japan Fuji mountain, Mount Fuji. So they call it new tallest mountain, or Nitakayama. That's a Japanese term to call the new tallest mountain. And so this is very important also for students able to get on the summit of the Nitaka mountain.